we went ahead and, because of some valve problems with the tower, decided to go ahead and fill the tower back up, and we would perform the preventative maintenance at a later date. They are replacing the vent, though. So the next two towers, both the one at 85th Street and then at the Coliseum, those are scheduled to occur next week. Each project is going to take about 2 to 2.5 days. We don't anticipate the problems that we've had with the window one, just because of the fact they are pretty close to being co-located, and the pressure, the water pressure should be able to better maintain. It is important to note that 3 or 4 months ago, Council approved a contract with Wilson and Company to do a modeling of the whole entire system. When that model is complete, we would have better information and better be able to determine what the impact is of some of the maintenance procedures that we have. That's not available at this time, so we were monitoring the situation, and as soon as we realized that the reduction in pressure and everything, we got it back within the hour to where it was back up to where it had been previously. So, pending any questions, sir, that's all I have.
Okay, Ben?
I did have one question about if we have heard any update as far as the planning for the pickleball court construction, if that's still on target or if they've commented at all. Or
The last that I had talked with our Assistant Public Works Director is it still was slated for the first week in July to get them out here.
Sweet. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay. George?
Well, I didn't have a question. I just had a comment. I'd like to tell the chief that I sure like seeing the rank of detective put in there. That's a long time coming. That's a good deal. Thank you.
All right. That was it for staff reports. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Jim?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
And Ben? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to new business, item 3, which is consider the presentation of the 2020 financial audit.
Good evening, everyone. First thing I want to do, my name is Teresa Seymour. I'm a senior manager at BKD. I want to thank Dee and the entire finance department staff. Doing a first-year audit is quite the undertaking, so I really appreciate their patience on answering questions for us and getting us the information we need. So we really appreciate Dee and her staff and all their patience. I can't think of a better word for it than patience. So I think you all have a copy of the financial statement and the management letter in front of you, so I'm going to go through both of those tonight. So I'll go ahead and turn you to about 3 pages in of the financial statements. This is what we call our independent auditor's report. This is what BKD provides. It gives you the information on what management's responsibility is, which is to prepare the financial statements. And then you'll also see that it has what auditor's responsibility is, which is to form an opinion on those financial statements after our audit evidence is obtained. I'll have you turn to the next page, and you'll see a couple of kind of scary looking paragraphs there. It talks about adverse opinion on GAAP. This is just a really bright line to say these are not GAAP financial statements. These are a Kansas regulatory basis financial statement. So just if anybody was looking at these and thought they might be GAAP, just making sure that they are not GAAP, and that is very clear. In the middle of that page, you'll see the opinion on the regulatory basis of accounting. This is the opinion. This is the financial statements referred to above presents fairly, which is an unmodified or a clean audit opinion, so that's the best you can get. We always like to issue that. That's the easy way to do it, so very, very happy to do that today and to thank Dee and their staff for allowing us to do that. I'll go ahead and turn you into the actual summary statement. That's on page 4. So this is just a snapshot of the city's activity for the year. You can see all the funds within the city, the beginning unencumbered cash balances, the receipts and expenditures throughout the year, and then the ending cash balances. Not really a ton to talk about. If you wanted to look at each fund individually, you would turn into the Schedule 2s that are in the back of the statement. One thing I did want to point out on here is the Capital Projects Fund. You can see there's a negative cash balance there. We have a note on that I'll talk about a little bit later, but other than that, we'll keep on moving on unless anybody has any questions on anything. The next statement is the composition of cash. This just kind of tells you where your cash is located. So you've got about $3.3 million in checking accounts, You have some cash on hand, and then about $12 million in the Kansas Municipal Investment Pool. Turning on to the notes to the financial statement, this is more kind of the qualitative aspect of the financial statements, give you kind of more of an in-depth look at what's going on, not just the numbers, not just looking at the numbers. You can kind of get a better idea of it. Note 1, I'll point out specifically because we pointed out in the management letter. This is the summary of significant accounting policies. This is the major reporting ideas behind the city. So if you wanted to know more about that regulatory basis, some of the funds they use, that's where you would look. Most of the rest of the notes are pretty standard notes that you've seen in the past. So I'll go ahead and turn you to page 15, where some of the newer notes start. So as I was talking about that, capital projects, negative cash balance on note 14, the stewardship, compliance, and accountability note. This talks about the Kansas statute, which is that expenditures be made in compliance with cash basis law, which says that no indebtedness can be created in excess of the monies in that fund. So you think, oh, that's going to be a violation. Well, there is some exceptions to that rule. One of those being that that indebtedness, when it is exceeded, as long as there is a provision that has been made to make a payment for the issuance of some kind of temporary note or some kind of bond, then that is not considered a cash basis violation. So you guys did have an authorized issuance of a bond to make those payments, so that's why that is not a violation. Note 15 is our subsequent event footnote. This kind of just goes through some things that had happened in 2021 that we thought maybe had a little bit of an impact on 20, just to make you aware of these things. First one is going to be the COVID. This is kind of a general footnote. It just says that, hey, COVID is happening. There's some things that we don't know quite yet what's going to happen with them. And so there may be some estimates that would be needed to do that, but we have not done those estimates at this time. The next couple paragraphs talk about the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, as it's more commonly known as. The city is expected to get some funding from ARPA, so we wanted to put that into the notes as well. Also, the city entered into an agreement with the Kansas Department of Transportation for the 77th Street improvements. That's that second paragraph on page 16. Just because of the size of the project, we thought that should get pointed out. In a similar vein, the second to last paragraph on page 16, the city had a big sale from their land bank to one entity. So again, just it's a material transaction. Want to make that very clear. And then finally, the last subsequent event is just the contract that you signed with Wyandotte Nation to get those annual contributions for the municipal services. The last note on there is going to be the long-term debt footnote. So if you wanted to know what kind of bond issues were outstanding, other things, what payments have been made, that would be a great place to look. The last thing I'm going to go into depth in the financial statement is going to be page 19, the summary of expenditures. This just lists out all the funds that have a budgetary requirement. It gives you the budget, the expenditures in the year, and then whether or not it was over or under budget. So anything in parentheticals would be under budget, and as you can see on the far right there, all the funds were under budget, which always like to see that. So the rest of the financial statement are those Schedule 2 statements. So if you did want to dig into a specific fund and look at a little bit more detail, that's where you would go. Is there any questions or anything? I'll jump into the management letter if there's nothing.
None. Feel free to move on.
So you should have a kind of a loose stapled letter. So this is what we call the management letter. This is a required correspondence between the auditors and those charged with governance, when in this case is the city council. And what it says is that any significant matters that we find during the audit, we need to communicate to you in some way. So that's what this first kind of section of the letter is talking about. As the letter continues, it starts talking about those things. So that significant accounting policies that I talked about in note 1, it points you to those. If there were any alternative accounting treatments, we would mention those there, but we did not have any of those. As we go on to page 2, you'll see the management judgment and accounting estimates. If we had anything that we thought was a major adjustment or a major judgment or estimate, we would point that out, but we did not have any this year. We also would point out if there was any financial statement disclosures that we thought were particularly sensitive. And again, the ones I did point out, they're not particularly sensitive, just wanted to point those out because they were new, but we did not have any financial statement disclosures that we thought fell into this category. In the middle of that page, you'll see the audit adjustments. We did have 2 audit adjustments this year. There was a reclassification for some funds that were being held in a liability account for health reimbursement that we made an adjustment to put that into cash. And then the utility accounts, we made an adjustment to put that in cash basis as required by the KMAG. The last part of this letter talks about auditor's judgments about the city's accounting principles. And again, this is a Kansas regulatory basis instead of a GAAP statement. And then the last thing talks about any other material communications we had with the city. And in this letter, you'll see a management representation letter that the city signs as representations of certain things that they did during the audit. So I'll also point out that that's the end of the letter. Usually in this letter, if we had any deficiencies, material weaknesses, anything in the internal control processes that we thought needed to be brought to your attention, that's where we would put them. But again, testament to your staff over here, we did not have any that we thought warranted that kind of attention on a management letter. So very happy to report that as well. So happy to answer any questions or any concerns or anything like that.
Does anybody have any questions? Ben?
Sure, I do want to say thank you to Dee and to your staff for the great work on this, and know that audits are never fun there. So thank you for your work. Thank you also as well for your work through this. I'd go ahead and make a motion to receive and file the 2020 financial audit.
Jim, did you want a second for discussion?
I'd second for discussion, but my comments are similar, that sounds like you didn't find anything, and
Yeah.
that's a
And
good
in a
audit.
first-year audit, I will say that's usually pretty rare. So
Yeah,
we did quite a few procedures and tried to find something.
So-
gotta make sure we do our job. But
So thanks
no,
for doing
I was
it.
very happy with where they were at.
Yeah, thanks for doing it, and congratulations to the staff for doing a good job.
I will also point out one more thing I almost forgot. So I also like to point out that the city council's also responsible for those internal controls. So I always appreciate due diligence on your guys' behalf when you guys do certain procedures, reviewing financials. Just keep that up and make sure that that continues throughout. So appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Dee.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 8-0. That brings us to item 4, which is discuss and consider approval of the Ironstone addition, a final plat for the property located at 69th Street North and west of Hillside Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Elite USA Construction as well as K.E. Miller are requesting approval of one-step plat. The applicants are replatting a portion of High Ridge Second Edition to continue development of residential uses in the area. It's important to note that the subject property is approximately 23 acres in size and is currently zoned R2 single-family residential. This portion of the High Ridge Second Edition and the areas to the south and the east remain undeveloped. The replat shows a total of 70 lots, which is the exact same number as the previous plat, and it seeks only to rename the subdivision, rename the streets, and add a drainage and utility easement, as well as widen a small number of the lots. The request is also in keeping with the general design of the undeveloped balance of High Ridge Second Edition. On May 17th, the Planning Commission approved the final plat 6-0, subject to staff's recommendation. There was a short discussion on the development in the area as far as that. There is no identifiable cost to the city approving the final plat, and staff recommends approval subject to the following 5 conditions. First of all, that the applicant shall provide title report per Article 5-101 prior to submitting the plat for signatures. A drainage plan shall be approved by the city per Article 501, 5-101, excuse me. Any additional easements requested by the utility company shall be included prior to the review by the City Council. The applicant shall provide financial guarantees to the city for all public improvements required as part of the development of the subject property prior to recording the plat. And then finally, any utility relocation required as part of the development of the subject property shall be the responsibility of the landowner.
Thank you, Sean. Does anybody from the council have any questions or discussion around this? Brandy,
Make a motion to approve the final plat as presented,
including the conditions that,
including the conditions that were mentioned.
okay. Tom? Tom?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 5, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in BARR Estates additions paving improvements. Sean?
Yes, sir. I'm going to give council a heads up. We have 11 different petitions all lined up. The first 3 here are for BARR Estates. BARR Estates is the new addition that's going in on 53rd Street, about the half-mile mark in between Hydraulic and Hillside. For all these, they read very similar. There's just a few little differences between them. The attached petition was filed with the city clerk proposing pavement improvements to BARR Addition. It was signed by the owners of records of more than 1/2 of the area liable for the assessment for the proposed improvements, and therefore the petitioners request that such improvements be made without notice and hearing as required by KSA 12-6A01. The improvements for the first one includes construction of pavement of Bressler Drive from the north line of 53rd Street North to Gray Drive. Gray Drive from the north line of 53rd Street North to Bressler Drive, as well as Echo Hills Drive from Bressler Drive to Gray Drive, with drainage to be installed where necessary to serve the area as described in the improvement district, all in accordance with the city standards and plans and specifications prepared and approved by the city engineer. The estimated or probable construction cost for this is $1,161,000, with the estimated cost being increased on a pro rata rate of 1% per month from and after the date of adoption of this resolution authorizing the improvements. The improvement district you can see is virtually the whole entire plat shown on the screen. Is to be assessed lots 1 through 22, block 1, lots 1 through 2 on block 2, and lots 1 through 7, block 3 of the BARR Estates addition to the city of Park City. The method of assessment is equally between all lots, with the improvement district being responsible for 100% and the city being responsible for 0%. Staff recommends approval.
Does anybody from the council have questions? Ben?
I don't have any questions, so I go ahead and move to approve Resolution 1070-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to letter of credit.
And Jim?
A second for discussion. Okay, just a couple things. Could you step us through the timing of this? I want to talk a little bit about we're developing an awful lot of lots and we have a demand for lots, so I'm happy to see it, but I want to think through the process of if we have too many, and I know and make sure we're in a position where we're not having to take some of these back later when these specials start coming into play, and we may potentially have a developer, I don't know that we would, but we have in the past where they couldn't pay the specials and then we ended up having to take them back at county sales. So I know we've since then put in place a standby letter of credit.
Yes, sir.
So
35%.
Could you comment on that?
Yes, sir. And it's important to note because tonight we are talking about 3 specific neighborhoods. We're talking about BARR Estates, we're talking about remaining lots in BEARHILL, as well as the remaining lots that Elite USA just purchased in Ironstone, what we just approved as far as the plat. There is also interest in the remaining 32 lots in Saddlebrook at this time, so we expect that would probably be coming before the council relatively soon. The one thing that the council has done to set in motion to protect themselves from this in the future is once the developer puts up a 35% letter of credit, that's when the work begins. That's when the engineer's design work can start, and that's when construction of these improvements, infrastructure improvements, can occur. Once those are complete, we normally, somewhere between 1 and 2 years, give the developer that opportunity to where we finance the improvements on temporary financing notes. giving them the opportunity to put some lots together, foundations, houses built, and get them sold to individuals before the actual special assessments occur. So, like I said, just depending on the timing of when the projects actually get done, it ranges between 1 and 2 years. So the concern, whereas previously the city was holding the bag, so to speak, on a tremendous amount of lots, in this particular case with that 35% letter of credit, that should be enough to carry any addition without any sale of any lots that have been improved from somewhere about 6 to 7 years prior to there being a particular problem. So it is something to be concerned with or aware of going forward.
I think that's great, and I appreciate that. This is where we see the value of putting in an idea like that. I think that protects the city and the neighborhoods
Yes, sir.
well into the future. One comment I got from the neighborhood, if you will, was that the thing that people will face is when you develop a lot and it's no longer a field that's maintained by a farmer or whatever the case is, you know, you sometimes have this potential for weeds and the lack of mowing. So, you know, I want to convey to the builders, which I know you will, or the developers, that it needs to maintain mowing.
Yes, sir.
And because that's the #1 complaint I get in some of these fields is when they get overgrown and we have critters out there coming out into people's houses. And I had to relay over 2 lots this week already that just already weren't being mowed. So, and I guess, you know, my thoughts on that is, you know, compliance is going to go out. We're going to go through the process. If they don't,
Yes, sir.
it's going to add to the tax roll for the cost of if we have to stop and mow it, which ultimately then could get reimbursed by this standby letter of credit. So I'm hopeful that we've headed that off, but I'd like to keep that front of brain. Is just something as simple as mowing agitates people.
Yes, sir, and code enforcement is aware of the 2 lots that you're referencing, so bless you.
So that's all I had.
George?
I just have a comment. I am, since I work for both of them, I'm glad to see that Mayor Bressler and Mayor Gray are being recognized. Thank you for whoever is responsible. Thank you much. They were great mayors.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 6, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in BARR Estates addition for the water improvements. John?
Yes, sir. Again, the petition was filed with the city clerk, and it is signed by the property owners, so they're making notice or request to approve the improvements without notice and hearing. The improvements for this petition includes a water distribution system, including necessary water mains, pipes, valves, hydrants, meters, and appliances to serve the area described as the improvement district. Again, all within the city standards, plans, and specifications as approved by the city engineer. The estimated or probable cost of the improvements is $234,000, and again with a prorate rate of 1% per month after approval. The same improvement district as the last, blocks 1 through 22, block 1, lots 1 through 2 on block 2, and lots 1 through 7 on block 3, all to equally share in that, with 100% going against the properties and 0% towards the city. Staff recommends approval of this.
Okay. Jim?
I'll take my turn on reading these. I move to approve resolution number 1071-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings subject to letter of credit. This is parentheses water-bar estates edition.
Okay. Ben?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 7, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in BARR Estates addition for sanitary improvements. Sean?
Yes, sir. Petition filed with the city clerk, signed by the owners of record of more than one half. Improvements include a lateral sanitary sewer, including necessary sewer mains and appurtenances to serve the area described within the improvement district, which remains the same. The estimated or probable construction cost for this improvements is $340,000 to be equally shared among the lots, with 100% going against the property owners and 0% against the city. Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Ben?
Yes, I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve Resolution 1072-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to a letter of credit.
Okay. Tom? Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 8, which is discuss and consider approval of design and construction engineering contracts for paving, sanitary sewer, and water for BARR Estates addition. Sean?
Yes, sir. BARR Estates is located on the north side of 53rd Street between Hydraulic and Hillside. Garver LLC, on behalf of the developer, has presented petitions that we just approved for paving, sanitary and sewer, and water for council's consideration. Attached are the associated contracts from Garver LLC for the design and construction engineering. Paving, $195,750. Sanitary sewer, $84,600. Water, $57,400 for a total of $337,750. It's authorized via funding temporary financing, followed by long-term general obligation bonds, and staff recommends approval subject to receiving the required letter of credit.
Okay. John?
I'll make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to finalize and execute contracts with Garver LLC in an amount not to exceed $337,750 to be paid out of the capital project fund.
John, would you add subject to the letter of credit?
Yes.
Okay.
Subject to the letter of credit.
Tom? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 9, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in BEARHILL Estates addition. Sean?
New development. The attached petition was filed with the city clerk proposing pavement improvements to BEARHILL Estates Phase 3 addition. The petition was signed by the owners of record and more than one half of the area liable for the assessment for the proposed improvements, and therefore petitioners request that such improvements be made without notice and hearing as required by KSA 12-6A01. The improvements include construction of pavement on Fallbrook Circle, Hideaway Circle, a portion of Fallbrook Drive, and a portion of Birchwood Lane, with drainage to be installed where necessary to serve the area described as the improvement district, all in accordance with the city standards, plans, and specifications prepared or approved by the city engineer. The estimated construction cost for the proposed improvements is $850,000, with said estimated cost being increased on a pro rata rate of 1% per month from and after the date of adoption of this resolution. The improvement district to be assessed for the cost of the improvements on this particular one is Lot 1, Block 2, lots 1 and 2, Block 2, lots 1 through 3 and 9 through 14 on Block 4, lots 1 through 39, Block 5, of BEARHILL Estate addition in the city of Park City. The method is to be assessed equally between all lots, with 100% assessed against the improvement district and 0% paid by the city. Staff recommends approval.
Brandy?
I move to approve Resolution 1073-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of making certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to the letter of credit.
Okay. Ben?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 10, discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in Bear Hill Estates Edition water improvements. Sean?
Yes, sir. Filed with the city clerk, signed by the owners of record. The improvements include a water distribution system, including necessary water mains, pipes, valves, hydrants, meters, and appliances to serve the area described as the improvement district. The estimated or probable cost of the proposed improvements is $225,000. The improvement district is different than the first one by one lot. This one, it does not include lot 1 of block 5, as that already had water to it. So everything else remains the same. Again, 100% to be assessed against the improvement district and 0 against the city, and staff recommends approval.
Ben?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 1074-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to letter of credit.
Tom?
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. For the next one. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to address that. 671 or
147.
code, and we're not secondary on there. The addressing up there is always in the Valley Center.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That brings us to item 11, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining advisability of making of improvements in Bear Hill Estates Edition sanitary improvements. Sean?
Yes, sir. The attached petition filed with the city clerk, signed by the owners of record. The improvements include a lateral sanitary sewer, including the necessary sewer mains and appliances to serve the area described as the improvement district, all in accordance with city standards, plans, and specifications prepared by or approved by the city engineer. The estimated or probable cost of the proposed improvements is $275,000. The improvement district for this one, again, is a little bit different. I'll read it because it affects several blocks. We have lots 1 through 3 and 12 through 14, blocks 4, and lots 2 through 31, block 5, Bear Hill Estates addition to the city of Park City. The method of assessment is equally between all lots, with 100% against the improvement district and 0% to the city. Staff recommends approval.
Ben?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 1075-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to letter of credit.
Randy?
Second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 12, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making improvements in Ironstone Addition paving improvements. Sean?
Yes, sir. New addition. The attached petition was filed with the city clerk proposing pavement improvements to Ironstone Addition. The petition was signed by the owners of record of more than 1/2 of the area liable for the assessment for the proposed improvements, and therefore the petitioners request that such improvements be made without notice and hearing as required by KSA 12-6A01. The improvements include construction of pavement on Ironstone Street and Ironstone Court, with drainage to be installed where necessary to serve the area described as the improvement district, all in accordance with city standards and plans and specifications prepared or approved by the city engineer. The estimated or probable cost of the proposed improvements is $500,000, with said estimated cost to be increased at a pro rata rate of 1% per month from and after the date of the adoption of this resolution. The improvement district for the paving as assessed is lots 1 through 22 Block A, lots 1 through 14 Block B, Ironstone addition to the City of Park City. The method of assessment is equally between all lots, with a portion of it being assessed 100% towards the improvement district and 0% to the city. Staff recommends approval.
George?
Oh, I'll give it a shot. I move to approve Resolution 1076-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the City of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to letter of credit, paving, Ironstone addition.
Okay, Jim?
I'd second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 8-0. That brings us to item 13, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in Ironstone addition. What are improvements? We're gonna need some water getting through this. Go ahead, Sean.
Yes, sir. Attached petition filed with city clerk, signed by the owners of record, more than one half. Improvements for this petition include water distribution system, including necessary water mains, pipes, valves, hydrants, meters, and appurtenances to serve the area described as the improvement district. The estimated or probable cost of the proposed improvements is $130,000. The improvement district is the same as the last, lots 1 through 22 Block A and lots 1 through 14 Block B, Ironstone addition. Method of assessment is equally 100% to the property owners, 0% to the city. Staff recommends approval.
Jim?
I would move to approve resolution number 1077-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the City of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to a letter of credit, water for Ironstone addition.
And Brandy?
Second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 14, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in Ironstone addition, sanitary improvements. Sean?
Petition filed with the city clerk, signed by the owners of more than one half of the property owners. Improvements include a sanitary sewer collection system, including the necessary manholes, cleanouts, and appurtenances to serve the area described as the improvement district. The estimated or probable cost of the proposed improvements is $230,000. The improvement district is different than the previous two. It includes lots 7 through 15 and 18 through 26 Block A, and lots 1 through 14 Block B, Ironstone addition. Method of assessment is equally between all lots, 100% assessed against the improvement district and 0 to the city. Again, staff recommends approval.
John?
I move to approve Resolution 1078-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the City of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to a letter of credit.
Bent?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 15, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in Ironstone addition stormwater drainage. Sean?
Yes, sir. The attached petition filed with the city clerk, signed by the owners of record. Improvements include construction of a sidewalk along with mass grading to serve the area described as the improvement district. The estimated or probable cost of the proposed improvements is $175,000. The improvement district to be assessed for the cost of the improvements is Lot 1 through 22, Block A, Lots 1 through 14, Block B, Ironstone Addition, equally between all lots, 100% towards the property owners, 0 towards the city. Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Ben?
Real quick, along this Ironstone addition, I do want to say that I do appreciate TJ working with the connectivity plan and such to make the improvements in his development there, just to work along. So want to throw that there, but I would make a motion to approve Resolution 1079-2021, and a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to letter of credit.
Come on, Ben took the hard part. Brandy?
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 16, which is discuss and consider a resolution determining the advisability of making of improvements in Ironstone Addition, off-site pavement improvement. This should make some people happy. Go right ahead, Sean.
Yes, sir. The attached petition was filed with city clerk, signed by the owners of record of more than one-half of the area liable for the assessment. The improvements include construction of pavement on 69th Street North from the west line of Ironstone Addition to Ironstone Street, with drainage to be installed where necessary to serve the area described as the improvement district, all in accordance with city standards and plans and specifications prepared or approved by the city engineer. The estimated or probable cost of the proposed improvements is $415,000. The improvement district to be assessed for the improvements is lots 1 through 52, Block A, and lots 1 through 18, Block B, Ironstone Addition. The method of assessment is equally between all lots, with 100% to be assessed against the improvement district and 0% to the city. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, Brandy?
I move to approve Resolution 1080-2021, a resolution determining the advisability of making a certain internal improvements in the city of Park City, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, subject to the letter of credit.
And Ben?
Sorry, second.
You know, this just ties in where we left off on 69th Street last. I know we've had a lot of complaints over there with people transitioning from pavement to gravel, and people driving a little nuts over there, so getting that paved all the way through is going to be nice for it. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate that. That brings us to item 17, which is discuss and consider the purchase of a drug incinerator for the police department. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Matt's on it there. I appreciate that. I thought it might be helpful to have a little visual demonstration here rather than me just talking and letting you see the brochure. So this is about the drug incinerator. So Matt, go ahead and play that whenever you want. Do we have audio?
Where our entire incinerator line, the drug terminator, Smart Ash, and MediBurn are all manufactured. The Elastic Drug Terminator is an incineration system for destroying narcotics, pharmaceuticals, and other evidence material. It's a cyclonic barrel burner design with an injection cartridge that allows police departments to safely destroy their narcotics. The DEA stopped their federal take-back program. However, police departments are still stuck with this material, but they have no clear way of how to dispose of it.
Years past have had to just go out in the country somewhere and get a fire going in a barrel, and that's how you dispose of those.
Will be a huge savings for the department, because before, when you had to go to the facilities, you had all the fees you had to pay for them. Last time it cost us $12,000 to destroy drugs.
With the Elastic Drug Terminator, you're able to destroy right there on site. So this type of system allows them to get rid of it at a local level very quickly, very easily.
For us to have this on site, it's a great benefit for us because we can get rid of it a lot faster.
Police departments to safely destroy.
Okay, I appreciate that. The police department has the task of destroying drugs that have been seized and once they're no longer needed as evidence. And I might add that sometimes these are seized as property even and not necessarily as evidence. In the past, we've accomplished this task in a couple of ways. For smaller quantities of drugs, we've simply burned them outdoors in a small fireplace type container, not in the woods or the country or whatever they said there, but for smaller quantities, we've done that. But for larger quantities, we have gone to the Wichita Animal Shelter for quite some time, and they've allowed us to use their crematorium to burn large quantities of drugs. Unfortunately, the volume of drugs that they're now getting from, as other agencies began to find out about that opportunity, they had to cut that off, so they're no longer allowing us to do that. So we need to purchase an incinerator specifically designed to safely destroy contraband drugs. Fentanyl is a synthetic narcotic drug which has become widely available, and I'm sure you know of it. It's a dangerous substance for our officers to handle because very small quantities of the drug can induce an overdose, even through inadvertent skin contact or inhalation. And in addition to fentanyl, there are many other drugs showing up on the streets which are dangerous and to handle or inhale, and they cannot be easily destroyed in a safe manner. We researched various drug incinerators. The drug terminator manufactured by Elastic was found to be reasonably priced and well made. It's a patented device that's widely used in law enforcement for this purpose. I think there was maybe a map included. There's a lot of agencies that use this, a lot of federal agencies, state and local, all across the U.S. It's by far the most widely used. So staff recommends that. I don't think there's a total listed here, but there is a quote, so I'll skip to that. The total for the incinerator is $4,590. That includes shipping. I would ask the council to consider approving this purchase for the police department.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
All right, Ben?
It makes sense to have a safe way to dispose of all this other than how been going on. So make a motion to approve the quote from Elastic for the drug terminator in the amount of $4,590 to be paid out of the general fund police.
Okay, and Jim?
I would second for discussion.
Right ahead.
Just one question. Do we take on any liability as a city for taking over the destruction of these drugs, I guess, for prior, I don't know, is there any risk that we destroy anything before it's needed for a case and that kind of thing?
We kind of have that risk anyway. Either way, it's our responsibility to make sure I understand your question, but we have that risk either way. So
Okay.
Now that we can't use the animal shelter, they were kind of taking on a risk to a certain degree, and they were nice enough to allow us to do that for a few years. It's really our responsibility. So this is something that is handled in different ways by different departments, but this is becoming much more common to incinerate it with a device like this, simply because of the dangerous nature of the drugs that are, particularly fentanyl. It's really changed the world.
Sure.
Unfortunately.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom?
Oh, I've just got one thing, one question or two.
Yes. We could do that, yes. The DEA, they mentioned there the DEA dropped their program for the destruction of drugs. Now, there are some other places that still do this. I know the closest one that I'm aware of has been Walmart at 53rd Meridian. They've done that. Even last year, I think they still had one. The problem that we might run into is the quantity. We don't really know how to estimate that, so it could result in potentially a large number of drugs, and then how long is it going to take to incinerate those? So, but yes, it could be used for that purpose.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Chief. That brings us
Mr. Mayor.
to
Sorry, go ahead.
item 18, which is discuss and consider the purchase of the drug analyzer for the police department.
Again, in this case, I think it'd be helpful to have a brief video which explains what we're talking about. So go ahead and play that, Matt.
According to the 2011 United Nations World Drug Report, at least 149 million people, that's 3.3% of the global population, have used an illicit drug in the last year. Controlled or scheduled substances spread like a plague from manufacturers and distributors through our borders and through our customs checkpoints, eventually ending up for sale on our streets and in the towns where we live. The problem is worldwide, yet the impact is felt directly by law enforcement personnel in our communities every day. Many departments are inundated with a backlog of suspected drugs pending confirmatory testing. After an arrest, wet chemistry kits are typically used to obtain a positive indication for presumptive evidence, followed by confirmatory testing in the lab. In addition, the time between initial arrest and prosecution can be significant. The processes used today for presumptive identification haven't changed for nearly a half century, until now. The thermoscientific TruNarc is setting a new standard for narcotics identification. TruNarc is a handheld system that can rapidly identify numerous narcotics in seconds in one single test. With TruNarc, the hassle, time, and manpower needed for narcotics identification is dramatically decreased. A single test for multiple controlled substances serves as a force multiplier, helping law enforcement officers be more efficient and effective with their time. TruNarc serves as a portable narcotics lab in the palm of your hand. TruNarc leverages laboratory-proven Raman spectroscopy as its core technology. This technique focuses a laser on the sample of interest, generating a unique spectrum, much like a fingerprint. This is compared to the known library of narcotics and cutting agents to determine the result. In addition to quick, accurate narcotics ID, TruNarc helps streamline the path to prosecution with automatic records for every scan, potentially eliminating the need for a chemist to testify. All records include the result, the raw data, and time-date stamp, and reports can be customized based on a specific department's needs. These permanent, printable records can be easily attached to arrest reports to support prosecution, prioritize lab testing, and reduce the manual administrative burden on officers. TruNarc is also ready for the future as emerging threats are added to controlled substances lists. The instrument's libraries can be easily updated. Got a drug problem? Get TruNarc. In addition to quick,
Thank you, Matt. Obviously, it's a commercial for the company, but I thought it helped explain what the device is. To explain the need and how this came about, I'll just read through the staff memo here quickly, but the police department has an urgent need to purchase a drug analyzing instrument. In the past, officers used small test kits which contain packets of chemicals to perform field tests on suspected drugs. Along with many law enforcement agencies, we've had to remove these kits from service due to safety concerns. Many officers across the nation have been exposed to highly dangerous narcotics such as fentanyl and have been injured by fires and explosions while performing field drug tests. Courts in Sedgwick County require a test to be performed on suspected drugs before the courts will formally charge a suspect and require them to post bond. Courts also require test results before they will issue search warrants. We use lab services provided by the Sedgwick County Forensic Science Center and the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Both labs are currently running approximately 7 months to provide lab results. And so I gave a hypothetical example, but this does apply in true life to many, many cases that we have pending at this time. So But for example, as it stands today, if we were to stop a suspect from a distant state who was hauling a large quantity of drugs through our city, they would be released from jail with no bond and no charges until a lab could provide lab results about 7 months later. We've researched the TruNarc narcotics handheld analyzer, which is the only device of its kind that will produce instant results, which are acceptable to the courts and to the district attorney's office in Sedgwick County. TruNarc is a small portable electronic instrument that uses a laser to perform no-touch analysis of a suspected drug. It has a library of over 300 drugs, which it will identify within seconds with a high degree of accuracy. The library of drugs is continuously updated by the manufacturer. Officers can place the device against a sealed plastic bag and perform an analysis without opening the package. The courts will accept the results of the TruNarc instrument in place of laboratory results for the purpose of initial charging and establishing bond, and also for search warrants. Formal lab results would only be necessary if the case went to trial, by which time the forensic lab would be able to provide results of their testing. The manufacturer sent us a unit that we could test out, and it has performed exactly as advertised. Several other law enforcement agencies in Kansas also use the TruNarc analyzer. That includes Wichita PD. I have brought the test sample unit that they have loaned to us if anyone wants to look at it. We're kind of being forced into this position by a couple of different directions, one of them being the policy of the courts, and I'm not being critical of that by any means. This is a long-standing policy, but the requirement to have drug test results in order to charge someone formally, and then on the other side, the chemical tests that we used to use, the little plastic bags that you saw in the video, you probably see on TV, those we had to take out of service because of the danger, particularly with fentanyl, but also explosions and fires have not been by any means uncommon. So officers across the country have been injured. There's even been a few fatalities from exposure to fentanyl or through fire explosions. So we had to find another way to be able to analyze drugs. The alternative is to wait the 7 or 8 month period to file charges, and that's about how long it takes to go to trial. So we're doubling if you add another 7 or 8 months on when the charges actually get filed, it adds up to like 15, 16 months for a case to go to trial. So I would ask your consideration of the purchase of the TruNarc, the TruNarc Thermal Scientific Portable device in the amount of $24,839.02. The quote includes on-site training and shipping and a 2-year warranty, which includes unlimited updates to the drug library.
Okay. John?
I'd make a motion to approve the purchase from the quote from TruNarc for a drug analyzer in the amount of $24,839.02, paid out of the General Fund Police Department's budget.
Brandy, did you want a second for discussion?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I just have a few questions. So you say there's a 7 to 8 month backlog at the Forensic Science Centers for the
Yes.
testing. Do we pay for that service?
Not directly through our taxes, but yes, ma'am, it's a free service to us there's not a direct charge to us.
Okay. And then, what's the lifespan of this machine? Because you said there's a 2-year warranty on it. So, but
Right.
for $24,000, I would hope it lasts longer than 2 years.
Right. A very good question. And there is, after the 2 years, the warranty not only includes the damage, or malfunction, but that also includes the updates. So after the 2-year period, then you need to pay the annual renewal on that, which it's listed in the quote. And I don't know if you got copies of the quotes. They were going to hand out a printed copy to you because it wasn't, I don't think it was included in the packet inadvertently, but It's on about the last page. So they show the list price for the annual warranties, $3,280. That's, now we got a discount off of that for the unit itself, and I would assume they would probably discount that for the renewal, but that's the annual amount that it would cost us on year 3 in order to keep this up to date.
So, I guess that didn't answer. Do you know what the what the lifespan might be of this machine though? I know, we just keep renewing every 3 years or whatever, but.
Right, it's kind of it's somewhat of a guess. I would estimate it would be at least 5 years. I mean, I can't imagine it would be less than that. Just on, technology is always evolving, so it seems like the lifespan of a computer runs about 5 years, 5 to 6 years before they get to the point where they're not really functional. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the same here.
Okay.
They did not give us a specific lifespan, so.
And then you say that they update regularly their database of drugs, and so that will automatically push to the machines. We don't have to pay an annual software maintenance fee to keep it all up to date.
Right, that would be part, the first 2 years are included, and it's, every time you turn it on, it updates, or you can do a manual update as well. But that's included the first 2 years, and then after that, you have to pay the annual maintenance fee, which includes the drug library or the updates.
And then, so how would this be used? So if we're only buying one, but you have multiple officers out, and they both need to test, so is it just where you run it back and forth, or does the drug be brought here?
Typically, we do it at the station here. It's not necessarily even performed at the time of arrest, although it could be. Usually, the arrest is. We've taken the chemical tests, like I mentioned. We took them out of service quite some time ago, so we're basing the arrest on all of the other evidence, the appearance of the material and where it's located, and all the other indicators that we have that give us probable cause. It could be brought to the scene if we had something we felt like we didn't have enough probable cause to make the arrest, and we needed to do a test there. We could bring it to the scene and do it there before we made the arrest, but typically it's going to be done at the station and probably by our detective before the charges are filed.
Well, I guess that leads me to, my last question then, is how does these results stand up in court then? So if you're bringing the drug back here to test it, who's to say that,
Well, that's, it would not be good for trial. The DA's office wants to have a full lab test if it actually goes to trial.
So it will still go to the forensic center no matter what?
Right, it will.
Okay.
But what it does is give us a test that's acceptable to the courts at a probable cause hearing so that they will actually charge that person and put a bond on them. The device itself is 99.XX%. It's extremely accurate. There are places that accept it in court. Kansas had just not gotten that far yet, so that's why they still want to have a lab test. But it is an extremely accurate device. But it would be accepted in the court and also for the purpose of search warrants, where we need to have a test on, say we've, same situation. We stop someone who has drugs and we want to do a search warrant for a location. We're going to have a test on those drugs before we could get the search warrant.
And do other agencies around here use this same device?
Wichita PD just purchased some. In fact, I believe that's where we got the information from initially. I've heard the number of 5. I don't know that. I haven't heard that for sure, but I've heard they purchased 5. The DEA task force has one that doesn't belong to them. It's actually the National Guard that brings it out and goes with them when they need it. Like if they're testing a bunch of drugs to send off to the lab, they'll come out and test it. There are other agencies, I believe Topeka PD, Salina PD. There's a list of other agencies in the state of Kansas that have bought this. It's becoming increasingly widely used.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, George?
About how long does it take, is it gonna take the officers to certify on that? I take it they have to be certified. And it's obvious, trial lawyers are gonna attack the officers at the probable cause hearing. So it would stand to reason that they'd have to be certified.
Right. I talked to Detective Miller. He's the one he's already gone through the training, has been using this one. He said, I believe it took him about an hour to do the training. And they'll actually come out on site. Now, what he did was video training. But I've watched the sequence. I haven't actually used it myself, but I watched it go through the sequence and what you do with it. It's very, very easy. It's pretty foolproof, actually. So the training is very simple.
Well, that's what I was curious about. Knowing how the attorneys operate, they're going to attack the officer and not the machine. So I was just wondering how much time it'd take them.
Excuse me.
Tom?
Randy asked questions that I had written down here, so I'm going to strike them off, but it related to something else. So if we have an arrest and there's probable cause, we still have to go through all the motions of going and doing the long-term test and everything else to make a court case before we go to court. So all this does is initially say, yeah, we've got a probable cause.
It would give us, yes. It gives us probable cause, so we could actually get a bond put on a person so they don't get released from jail with no bond.
Okay.
And it shortens the entire process from arrest to trial from about roughly 18 months. It takes 7 or 8 months off of that.
Is there any additional cost other than the $24,000 that it would cost to do that, to run this thing?
The only other thing, there's some alcohol solution. There's certain forms of heroin that they suggest you mix it with this alcohol solution if you're going to test it. It's very cheap, but beyond that, that's all.
I know you probably don't have a number, but an estimate, how many times you think this machine will be used a year? Or say a day or a week,
Yeah.
you know?
You know, it varies a lot, but several times a month. I mean, we have an evidence room that's full of evidence right now. Now we'll be cutting down on some of that now that we can destroy it a little bit more easily, but it varies a lot depending on what our caseload is. But we have, if you look at our stats every month, we have an increasing load of drug cases, and several times a month. We're taking drugs down to the lab several times a month.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 19, which is discuss and consider approval of the contract for the 2021 Road Improvement Program. Sean?
Yes, sir. First, I'd like to say I'm pretty happy both Simon and Zach aren't here tonight because they're both out in Garden City doing training for wastewater small systems. So that's why I'm presenting this tonight on behalf of Simon. In July 14th of 2020, Council discussed and directed staff to develop the comprehensive road repair and replacement plan to address the needs throughout the city's existing infrastructure. Public Works went through the process to rate the pavement existing using the asphalt pavement rating system. The process identified the areas that could be repaired at a cost-effective rate to bring the roads into an acceptable level, whereas any future distress would require standardized rehabilitation. On September 18th of 2020, Council was presented 3 options for consideration in the 2021 budget. Streets approved for repairs or improvements included Robbins between Grove and Ulysses, Ulysses between Fairchild and Robbins, Randall between Gary and Fairchild, Burlington between Upchurch and Poston, Irving between 49th and 51st, Denver between West Parkview to East Parkview, Upchurch between 61st and Evanston, Evanston between West Parkview and East Parkview, Wichita between 53rd and Southern Point, Charleston between West Parkview and East Parkview, and then finally Scottsville between Fairchild and Ventnor. Bids were solicited earlier last month in May of 2021 with the bid opening scheduled as of June 7th, yesterday. The results of the bid tabulation was not available at time to include into your packet, so I'll present that now. Unfortunately, we only had one bid received, and that was from Pearson. The bid amount was $261,226.05. Staff's estimate of what it was going to take to do the repairs was just over $200,000. As it's been a couple years since we have done similar type projects, obviously the cost of asphalt construction has gone up. We did, seeing how there was just one company that submitted, we were able to kind of bend their ear during the bid opening and asked them the process if it worked for them. The feedback that we received is some of the larger companies out there, they're not interested in anything other than full depth reclamation. They didn't want the smaller type projects. So they didn't want to act as a general contractor and have several subs. So they were interested in the full depth reclamation and mill and overlays, but not so much in slurry seal as well as scrub seal. Next year, to mitigate this problem, what we plan on doing is next year is breaking it up into two contracts, one for smaller type projects and one for larger projects. We had 11 streets that we're going to do this year, and the one thing we didn't want to do is get into 11 separate contracts because some of them are small enough in size to where I don't think anybody would put in for it. So it is budgeted within the Special Streets and Highway Capital Outlay Fund, and staff recommends approval and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Pearson Construction in an amount not to exceed $261,226.05.
Thank you, Sean. Brandy?
I make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the contract with Pearson in the amount not to exceed $261,226.05.
Jim?
Yeah.
And I'd second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I just have a question. We're talking about slurry and seal.
Yes, sir.
We've got some streets, I know Irving's one of them, that there are large portions of it that have just decayed, they're gone.
Yes, sir.
And so they will replace those patches or patch those, or?
Yes, sir. It's primarily, I mean, trying to break it up into various different segments. If there's areas that need to be patched and repaired first prior to doing the seal on top of it, yes, that'd be done.
Well, like Irving was a gravel road, and when we did a bridge on Broadway, we paved it because people were using it to cut through. So it was never, the base was never there.
Yes,
So
sir.
there may be some issues when we go in and look at that one.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 20, which is discuss and consider the ordinance adopting the codification of ordinances for the city of Park City, Kansas. Doug?
Mayor and council, in 2019, the city hired Ranson City Code Financial to update the city's municipal code and then to put that in a form that it could be adopted, and that's what we're here to do tonight. And maybe more importantly, in a form in this day and age that could be attached to our website so that we would finally be in a position where the general public and our citizens could get online and look at the city code and actually search it. And the same for staff. This is going to make it a lot easier for staff. Just this afternoon, Sean and the chief and I were trying to figure out something, and we all looked. The chief looked better, and it would have been a lot easier to just put a couple of words in and search. But what you have in front of you is an ordinance that adopts this that was drafted by Ranson. And when you approve this ordinance, one of the thick new codifications will be filed with the city clerk, and then 3 copies will then be made available for the public to look at physically if they want to come into the administration center to look at the code. And then there'll be some number that they'll distribute to city staff. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but this is the end of a almost 2-year process. COVID interrupted the staff's review of the municipal code. But one thing I did forget to say, that since about 2009 or 10, I can't remember when we codified the city's ordinances. Every ordinance that's been adopted since then has been now added to our municipal code. So this should be up to date, and then it's online, so that Ranson will continue to keep it updated, so that when we adopt ordinances that are part of the code, those will be not instantaneously, but pretty quickly made available and then updated and then be searchable and available to the public and to staff.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Ben?
This is great here for everybody in the city and our area, so I'd move to approve ordinance 1121-2021, an ordinance adopting the codification of ordinances of the city of Park City, Kansas, providing for the repeal of certain other ordinances not included therein, accepting certain ordinances from repeal and saving certain accrued rights and liabilities. Accrued. There we go.
John? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lynn,
Aye.
George Glover,
Aye.
Ben Saucetta,
Aye.
Melvin Kerr,
Aye.
Tom Jones,
Aye.
George Capps,
Aye.
Brandy Bailey,
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that ordinance passes 8-0. Thank you, Marla. That brings us to item 21, discuss and consider approval of a contract with McAuliffe Excavation for the relocation of water lines related to the 61st Street project. Everybody has a copy in your desk that Sean's getting ready to go over on the staff summary. Sean?
Yes, sir. In January, council approved a contract with Mees Construction Company to relocate and make improvements of certain water lines adjacent to and in support of the 61st Street project. The original contract amount was for $155,884. Since then, council has approved several change orders covering cost overruns that were necessary to make the repairs and improvements, as well as compensating for additional man-hours needed locating lines and valves that were not accurately represented in our existing records, documents, or our as-built plans. Mees Constructed submitted change order number 10 for $48,600 to relocate a 12-inch water main around the proposed stormwater drain at Newcastle Road. In addition to the price quotes, the proposal places the responsibility of operating all the valves necessary to perform the shutdown on the city, which is problematic due to the location and the depth of the existing valve. I think we've talked about this before. On the east side of the bridge, on the north side of 61st Street, there is a valve that has not been exercised much over the year because of the fact it is 18 feet down. Public Works actually has a valve turner that's 18 feet long, but it's problematic. We had problems with it when the bridge was being constructed, and we were just kind of gritting our teeth, because if we ever have problems with that 18 feet down, it's not going to be pleasant. As this was not part of the original bid or the contract, the city engineer contacted McCullough Excavation, soliciting another bid to both relocate the previously mentioned line, as well as to install a new inserter valve on the new line, which would bypass the existing valve and prevent future problems. The reason why this is crucial to us is that water line goes over the highway, or under the highway, I should say, and is what provides water to Quick Trip, Applebee's, and a lot of the commercial businesses on the east side of Interstate 135. McCullough's cost estimate to relocate the water main itself is $29,010, and an additional $28,000. There's a typo there. It says $28.50. It's $28,850. So I'm missing an 8 there for the new inserter valve. It is budgeted within the project, so staff recommends approval and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with McCullough Excavation in the amount not to exceed $57,860. The only reason why it's being brought to you tonight as an add-on is because we just received the quote, and with construction delays, as everybody is experiencing with higher prices and everything, we wanted to get McCullough on that. As we have indicated that all the utility relocates will be accomplished, completed by July time period in order to support 61st Street project. So I apologize for the delay in getting it to you, but that's what we need to approve.
Does anybody have any questions for Sean? Jim?
I don't, so I will try to make a motion here, craft a motion. I would move that we approve the contract with McCullough Excavation for the relocation of water lines related to the 61st Street project in the amount not to exceed $57,860. And do we need to state what this is to be paid out of?
No, but I would include to authorize me to execute the contract.
Oh, there it is. I see it. Sorry. Oh yeah, to authorize the mayor to execute the contract with McCullough Excavation in an amount not to exceed $57,860.
Okay, Ben?
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 22, which is for the council to consider allowing camping in the Happy Plain Park, June 18th through the 20th to support a BMX bike event. Jamie sent me an email a few weeks ago talking about their event coming up on the 18th through the 20th. And really that email discussed that to bring future events like national or Gold Cup type event or final to the city, that it would be helpful if that we could allow RVs to stay overnight in the park. In talking with her today, she was wanting to see if the council would approve that for this upcoming event. And she believes that it will be beneficial and that they have over 600 people coming in to do that. So according to the city ordinances, there's no overnight camping allowed. However, I think Doug found there's something there relating to a sign. If a sign's posted, we can post a sign and allow an RV stay overnight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that we would also need an approval or authorization from the police department, and the chief said that if the council was in favor of this, that he would be in support of it as well. So I just want to open up kind of some conversation around this and see how you feel. This is kind of odd because they already have an event planned, and now we're asking, we're trying to get something, we need to see if something's here. I think too also, sometimes they get C&T funds that help fund that, and that gets replenished back through the hotels, and we're kind of sidestepping that, and it could create problems as far as what's going on in the park, how many are actually coming. We don't really know. Is it going to be 5 or is it going to be 25? So she is not able to be here this evening because they're doing the resurfacing tonight. Obviously, they need to have an answer this evening, so they have that event coming up on the 18th. So let's have some good dialogue around it. Ben?
When we approve or not approve, but this is for the sake of this question, if we approve this, would it be limited to a certain designated area that we're approving for? Would it just lift it citywide for camping?
No, it would be for us to identify an area of where that could be.
I mean, I don't generally, I can see both sides there talking about the C&T funds and the motels revenue. I also know that they have done a lot of work to try to build up this track and to try to support our community through their events and everything. And for something like this, I could see granting approval just for the fact that part of the C&T money that was also, or some of the, not necessarily the C&T money, but some of the benefits to our community are still going to portray itself through our restaurants and gas stations and places like that. I mean, I'm open to the idea, but I was first up, so.
Okay. Tom?
I was gonna say, we have had camping in the park before, and it was city events, but it's been tent type thing. I think that as we try to grow the BMX track, we're gonna have more activities like this potentially coming. I think it would be proactive on our part to support them on this. Maybe keep the campers back over by the BMX track parking area on the west side. I would be for it.
Okay, Brandy?
Well, you answered the one, you didn't know how many we're anticipating, but do we know how many potentially the park can hold? How many campers can be held? And another was, where were we looking at the campers being held at? How do we monitor the dumping of the wastewater or the gray water tanks? Is there baseball or disc golf going on in the park that weekend as well? That could, where it has more traffic in the park, so therefore, how are the campers gonna be in there if there's other events going on? Do we know if there's events going on besides just the BMX?
We have, George, you're having your fishing derby. So we know that's gonna be on the other side. We're unsure if baseball has anything right now. Other than that, we think the park is fairly open. This was really kind of a last minute thing that got dropped out here because there are a lot of unanswered questions. I would say if we do this, we probably do something where it's limited to around the track. I would also say that we probably need to put a limit on the amount of RVs, and I would start small, 10 or something like that. Absolutely no dumping of gray or black water anywhere on the property. And try this as a test mode to see what happens. Our parks really weren't meant or designed for this. I have concerns about somebody dumping stuff, additional trash, somebody trying to get power and deciding to run it over somewhere and plug it in and start throwing breakers in the park. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and we're in uncharted territory for this. But I think we just come out and put a limit on what it's going to be, where they can park. No dumping of anything, no connecting or trying to power up their vehicles in any way to city power. And we could try giving it a shot. I have some other concerns around if there was a torrential rainstorm around this time and we have to start blocking off the gates because of the creek coming up. And even if we have them park in the back, we know that's an area that floods. What happens with that area getting rutted up or somebody getting stuck out there, and then we have to go in there and try to fix it later, or just trying to get somebody out. That's an unknown, but I think it's something that you just have to consider. What if it happens? Do we need to be able to go in there and say, hey, creek's rising, there's a good chance this area's gonna start flooding, you have to leave the area. So we'll just keep going around. George?
I don't see a problem with it. I'm with Tom. I remember we've allowed camping there before. I remember the Civil War reenactors. They camped out there in the open field and stuff. Of course, they used tents and stuff, but still they camped there. Didn't have any issues.
Okay. John?
I was a little skeptical before we had our discussion here, but I feel like if we're gonna, this is probably a good time to try. It's last minute notice, so a lot of people probably have hotels maybe. So maybe this will keep the number low. And I did look up online, and there is a ball tournament there at the park that weekend. The one thing I think, in light of potential rain and parking out there, I think we need to make sure that the BMX track folks are aware that if someone does dump a tank out there, it's going to be up to them for removal, or we're going to remove it and they're going to pay. And then I feel like parking wise, I think maybe this first time, if we're gonna limit like 10, we maybe just ought to leave them on the parking lot that we have, that maybe the far west side that's up against, so they're on a semi-hard surface. I think, you know, if something if it does rain, we probably wouldn't want to do that again. So maybe this would give us a good idea of some small problems, some unintended consequences while it's small. And then we can grow it from there if we need to, or they can bring in some gravel or dirt or whatever they need to do for a parking area if it's something that works.
Yeah, I do think it's something, and kind of like what George said, you know, tents is one thing, but pulling a 42-foot fifth wheel out there with a 3/4 ton pickup, that's different, and we really don't know what's going to happen. And if we do get a lot of rain, that back corner where we're talking about just completely flooded. So the hard surface is probably a much better idea, but you know, once again, you know, if it's 10 pop-up trailers, it's probably not a big deal, but take 10 big fifth wheels, now I don't know what they're talking about. And then if we do have something with baseball going on, that takes up quite a bit of space. And if anybody saw this last weekend, that place was packed with baseball. There was not an open parking stall out there that you could see from the highway.
We probably want to notify the baseball program that this is going to be going down on that side.
Jim?
I agree with what's been said. I'm trying to open my mind to allowing this. I like the idea of limiting to 10. That's a good number let's try this and see how it works and what kind of issues that arise in the future to be used for the future. I like the parking. It needs to be up kind of over in that northwest corner on the surface area, not down in the mud. One thing I wanted to add is maybe somebody ought to look at our insurance policy just to make sure we're covered for something like this for liability. And if we find something that we're not comfortable with, I don't know, a storm comes through, the flooding, injuries, I mean, something that, you know, if there's anything that poses some undue financial risk to the city, then I wouldn't support it. That's all. I just wanted to add that.
Okay. Tom?
I was going to say, when I was talking about the west side, I was talking about the parking lot. I didn't even think about trying to park out on the grass because I think that's not the right thing to do. But I do know at one time we looked at this at potentially having the barbecue contest that used to be here out at Wiedemann Park, moving it to the West Park and making it so they could camp in there and park. And there was discussion at one time about power and everything back there, but it got dropped. I just think it's something we need to investigate, because if we are going to have events in the future, we need to have some type of opportunity for people to come in and park like that with the families and stuff. And it might be BMX today, but it could be baseball tomorrow or something else down the road. So we need to look forward out, see what we can do to help some of this stuff. So,
Brandy?
I'm open to trying and testing the waters, but I think we need to make it clear that it is specifically the campers there. That way we don't have a bunch of people coming in and bringing tents as well and trying to pop up a tent in the parking lot because they're allowed to camp. And then I know when you go camping, you like to set out around the fire and, you know, drink and get loud or whatever. I would want to make it clear that there's no fire pit or anything allowed in this. I don't know. I have some concern. Like I said, I'm open to try this. I just still have a lot of concerns about noise, noise going on, the trash going on. I don't know.
Okay, George Glover.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant about last-minute decisions for people to do stuff. That being said, in lieu of the baseball tournament that's going to be there, I have a lot of issues with parking. I have a lot of issues with what's going to be going on out there, being able to control the masses, you know, the police, what kind of police force are we going to have out there to control what's going on? Because I know with the ball games, it's crowded out there, and every parking space is filled up. If we want to control it this year, plus we don't have the person here to take questions from us. We're kind of just throwing it out there, the last minute thing. I would like to see that person here to answer our questions, to give us legitimate, some of our concerns, to give us positive feedback, or say, this is what we plan to do if this happens. So my concerns are what ifs, and it's always a concern with these last minute things. I don't have a problem with the camping per se, but with the big 44-foot trailers that come in there, as far as taking up space, maybe a dumping issue, you're gonna have all those come up. I can assure you of that. So my concern is last minute, as well as people doing what maybe they shouldn't be doing, but they're gonna do it anyway. And also the fact having somebody here that represents the track and says, this is what's gonna happen. I know you have these issues, and then bring it up to them and say, how are you guys gonna take care of those issues? How are you gonna take on your end? Thank you.
So I just want to go through just a few of our ordinances. Just camping's currently prohibited. Overnight camping is prohibited in the parks except where posted, which we discussed how we could get around this. The hours of operation, except otherwise provided in sections 12-116 and 12-117, all city parks shall be open for use by the public from the hours of 6 a.m. till midnight, and shall be unlawful for any person to be present in a Park City Park between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. unless otherwise authorized in writing by the Park City Police Department. Another thing that we have is unlawful use of Chisholm Point. That's not going to affect us right now. But so I want to come back to staff. You all heard us throw some stuff out here. You know, the big thing is enforcement. How would we deal with that? So I just kind of want to bounce stuff off your all's head. So obviously we don't have things in place to handle anything like this. If we put a limit at 10 or 15 RVs and there's 16 out there, would we be able to do anything about that? Do you say, who's the last person that rolled in, you're out? Would we be able to do that if we did anything? And Doug, I'm looking for your input too. You know, if somebody dumps something, I mean, I think it's pretty easy for us to come back and tell the BMX folks that, you know, if there's a dumping damage or anything like that, you all need to take care of that. Go ahead, Doug.
Sean and I kind of had that discussion, and it was his idea that this was going to be all laid on the BMX people. They're responsible for giving out numbers. If it's limited to 10, they're going to tell who's 1 through 10. And if somebody that's not 1 through 10 tries to get in, it's going to be up to them to say, you can't be here. If somebody dumps something, it's up to them to clean it up or pay for the damages. That was our concept.
When we talked about this earlier, there's no doubt BMX, they have done a phenomenal job with that, and we're making repairs and improvements to it now and everything. And so I think it is worth it for us to do this on a trial basis to kind of learn in a small scale what are the pros and cons of it. I've listened to everything that the council member has said, and it's all things that I believe, yes, it would be very fortunate if Jamie was here tonight to be able to answer some of this, but I think hearing the temperature from the council, we can convey those type concerns to them and say, look, it's going to be in a certain designated area because we do have another ball tournament going on here. We can carve off a section and say this is in support of that. On a solid surface parking and not in the grass. Limit it to 10 RVs only, not tents. No dumping, no hookups, no fire pits. Our public works staff should be able to locate some extra trash receptacles and be a little bit proactive and plan on that. Like Doug said, make BMX responsible to, we're not going to be out there to say, well, only the first 10 show up. Make them contact BMX ahead of time and make arrangements with it and then put it in Jamie's court for her to manage that. So our only concern that we also talked about was our BMX track is getting recognized, I believe, on a more regional, national level. I don't think that the chief would like to see, and if I'm okay, if I misspeak, tell me. I don't think that we'd like to see this as an every weekend occurrence, but if you have those gold level events, national events and everything, that may be the time that they need to come back to council and request and say, hey, and if they do good on the first one, then council would probably be more amenable to that in the future. Plus, we would have learned some from that. So I believe that we could convey that message to the BMX folks if council would like us to.
So on a couple of emails that she sent me. So the first one is, she just contacted me and said they had a conversation with a gentleman last Saturday in Yukon, Oklahoma. He works for USA BMX, and let me know what we're doing is being noticed. He plans to be in attendance for this June 18th through the 20th, and he told her that if they had camping on the track property available, and we could get it approved for special circumstances like this, he said for us to get a Gold Cup final or a national, this would help tremendously. Now, I took that as in the future, this might be something we would look at. And then she sent me an email this evening, said she wasn't going to be able to be here. She knew we had a council meeting and hoped we were going to approve it. So we had some back and forth like, you want it for this weekend? And she says, yes, we'd like approval for the weekend of the 18th through the 20th. We have people coming into town from all over South Central region for the race on Saturday the 19th. This day alone will draw 600 people or more. So when I see that number, and we already talk about baseball and it being packed, and then we're talking about RVs, this seems like it's going to be a highly congested weekend. And we already have 600 people coming, is allowing camping in the park drawing the crowd in. Now, to me, the people that are operating the track are doing something, if they wanted to set up shop or do something so they could help work on the track throughout the night and take breaks or go do something, that makes perfect sense. But when I see 600 people coming, like, does that mean 100 campers? Like, I don't know what that means. Ben?
Well, I think a couple of things got kind of mentioned or answered, at least about the trash receptacles, as far as maybe finding some extras to put out there. Then my thought prior to just putting it all on BMX was something similar to what we've been talking about with the RV situation in general, and that is permit. I know that puts a little extra bit on our staff, but if you just did hey, contact the city for your permit for this time, we would know exactly who those people are, and make it somewhat enforceable by that means, just by the fact that they have the permit for it. I know it puts some stress on our city staff though as well. So just a thought, but I know that even if we leave it in the hands of BMX, I mean, I guess they're going to have to tell somebody to move out, but what if they have that issue with it not, then how do we still enforce that? Do we just kick them all out? Do we kick, So the thought of, or the idea of maybe looking at a permit system, that would be something I'd be in favor of as well. Then we'd be able to know the specific people or individuals involved. I mean, we got 600 people coming. We're going to have that either way, regardless of approving this parking or not. So if we're limiting it to 10 or 15, their RVs, are we going to put size restrictions on that? Because I mean, again, those RVs can range from 18 feet all the way up and go on. There, that gives us a little bit of a perspective on what we're dealing with. But
yeah, and then the other thing, just with the size, we're just talking out loud here, kind of like what George is saying. I hate doing stuff last minute, and the permit thing, I think, really convolutes it, trying to do something last minute, something like that. Definitely like throwing everything back onto the BMX track folks. But I think if we designate an area, we could let the area determine how many RVs can stay here. Because if that's how we can allow this to happen, is by posting a sign, we can pick an area and say, here it is, that's the space. Once it's full, it's full. and I think with the ordinance, Doug, if I'm correct, if somebody is parked outside of that area, it'd be pretty easy for us to also enforce that and make them leave.
Well, again, let me caution you.
Okay.
Enforcement is, I don't know what's in your mind on that, but bringing in a auto-in tow truck and towing them out of there ain't gonna happen. They can get written a ticket. But if there's 12 there, there's probably gonna be 12 there on Sunday when everybody leaves. So we have the ability to enforce a violation by having somebody there outside the area they're supposed to be in, but probably not a way that weekend to make the people get out of there, other than, again, the strongest leverage we would have, I think, is probably the BMX people, Jamie and her people, because they should be able to go up and say, you're killing this for everybody. Get out of here. And that, I personally think that's more effective than us writing tickets and sending the police down there to, knock on RV doors. But
I agree. Good?
I'm good, yes. Sorry.
John? John.
Okay.
I feel like we've had a good discussion. I'm just gonna throw this out there just to see where it lands, and we can proceed there or make another motion. But I'm gonna make a motion that we allow camping in designated area that is designated by the city administrator or his staff at the park, but on June 18th to 20th. That would allow camping in RV campers in the designated area only. And I would also say that the city administrator or his designee would also work with the staff of BMX to give additional restrictions or provisions on those who are camping.
Tom, did you want a second for discussion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
I just had one more thing,
Okay.
sorry. I would also, after this is done, like a post-event report back, like just tell us how it went so we know how to proceed later if we never want to do it again. Thank you.
Yeah, Tom, so good with that?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any additional comments?
Yeah, I do. If you leave it to the BMX people for controlled parking, you can put 8 campers in one place, or you can put 12 in one place if they park them correctly. So they need to be responsible on how they set them up. We're getting to the point where in the past, we've always tried to put everything in Hat McLean Park. And I've said you can only get so much in there and benefit. Well, we're there now where we're starting to have events show up and nobody else can be there because that event's taking all the square footage for parking and everything else. So what are we gonna do about this in the future? I mean, we as a council need to think past this. If we're gonna have baseball up there, we're gonna have BMX up there, and we're gonna have some other things up there, everybody can't show up on the same weekend. We just can't do it. So the other thing is BMX is building their national headquarters in Tulsa as we speak. So we're going to be close enough that there's potential for more benefit in this area for BMX too. So there's an opportunity for that to grow. So, I'm not going to rattle anymore. I'll stop.
Okay, Brandy?
So you said that they're expecting 600 people for theirs,
That's what she said one day.
and then there's the baseball tournament. How many, do we know approximately how many might show up for a baseball tournament? Is there enough parking for all that? And then if we're taking up a spot for RVs, where's everybody gonna park? I guess I have an issue. I just concerned there. And then just one more thing, and it might be jumping the gun a little bit too, or just looking too far in the future, but so we have baseball going on there. We have the BMX race going there. We're telling BMX they can have campers. Well, baseball sees that, so then what happens next time BMX and baseball have the same event, and then we have both of them come in here asking for camper spaces? What are we gonna do then? I mean, we can't allow every event to have camper spaces, because then there's gonna be no place to park. I don't know.
I don't know, maybe somebody will find that this is a business venture if it's truly that bad and buy some land and create an RV park close by.
Jim? What you said there, that's why I view this as a test, to see how this is gonna work. We'll know after we try it once, but you could be absolutely right.
John?
And this is my thoughts of, we're not spending any city money, no tax money, no nothing. We're gonna try this and see how it works. If it takes off, maybe we wanna do that, where we do permits and charge people whatever amount of money to rent it for the weekend or whatever. I don't know, maybe if it makes our program grow, be it BMX or baseball program, great. There is plenty of, we're not landlocked where we can't grow that. There's agricultural land around it that we can purchase if we see a good need for it. So I think this is a good problem to have. Try it out. Doesn't work, kick it to the curb.
So I'm gonna have a couple of questions. Did you have anything about any dumping or any damage or anything goes back to?
No, I left it open for Sean's staff to give additional provisions or restrictions.
And I just want to make sure that any barbecuing or anything like that is in our designated pits. We're not creating fire pits out there and smoking s'mores or whatever we're doing. Tom?
I just have one question. The people that are going to come to the BMX track that night are going to be the people that want to come back. So they're going to be positive in their camping. We may have an issue with one of them or something, but most of those people are going to come back and they want to leave with a positive effect on the city. So I think it would be a positive thing.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That was the last item on the agenda this evening. We'll start with closing remarks, and we'll start with Jim.
No closing remarks.
Randy?
I wasn't here last council meeting, and Simon and Zach aren't here tonight, but I'd like to publicly recognize them for their help with the Serve Day. I took a team of volunteers over to AirCap Drive and spent 4 hours picking up trash over there. And we didn't even make a dent in there and didn't even get halfway down AirCap Drive. I think we ended up with 12, 13 trash bags full of trash. So I appreciate them being there where I could call them and say, hey, okay, we got more bags of trash. Can you come pick them up? Because we were just lining them up along the road. And so I just appreciate them jumping in and helping us to come do that. And like I said, they're not here, but I just want to publicly recognize them. And then also, I walked down 61st Street quite a bit, and there was grass growing between the sidewalk and the curb between Scottsville and Grove. And I made mention of it, and they were out there the next day, and all those weeds were pulled, so I appreciate them doing that. And then there's a tree in the park that was over the sidewalk that every time you walk, you hit your head on it, and they got on, I commented on that, they got out there and got it cleaned up. So I just appreciate them getting out there and taking care of things that need to be taken care of.
George?
Well, I'm kind of like you. I want to recognize somebody. You know, I was very sad when I looked at the election candidates down there to see our present mayor wasn't on it. You know, I go back 8 years. Most of you people weren't here then, 8 years ago, when Ray became mayor. You know, our employees were, in my opinion, underpaid. Hadn't had a raise in several years. And he started changing some of that stuff. Now I think, and besides that, you know, we were working out of an old city hall that was in disrepair, getting in bad shape. We'd outgrown it. And Ray worked pretty darn hard. We got our employees up there where we're comparable. They get their raises. We got a beautiful city hall. I'd like to say, you know, Ray and I sometimes have had disagreements, but, you know, we've been able to sit down and talk like adults and work them out. But, You know, over the years, Ray has not only worked hard for the city and for the welfare of it, but you wouldn't believe how much time he spends with CCUA. Most people don't see that. And I can tell you, we have grossly underpaid him. He has not received the compensation that he should have received for the hours he put in. And sometimes we give him a hard time here. And for some of those times, I feel bad about it. We shouldn't have done it, but we did. And all I can say is you know, you've done a heck of a job, and I'm sorry. I hope you reconsider the next time around and get back with us, because I don't know any other way to say it. You've done a hell of a job, and thank you.
Thanks, George. I appreciate it.
Sure. Well, it's truth.
It was a tough decision.
Well, and we're gonna miss you. Maybe we'll get you back in a couple of years.
But I will, I've been working on the plan expansion for the CCUA for the last 4 years. There's been some different things that I still have on a wish list that I want to try to get accomplished. And if after this, whoever's sitting here next or council members, want me to, you can still appoint me to the CCUA, and I can continue to help work on that board and help in different capacities.
Well, the only thing I can say is you've done a great job, and you didn't get credit for what you done at CCUA. Yeah, I know what you did, but the average person doesn't know. But you deserve a lot of credit, and you sure were underpaid.
Thanks, George.
Sure.
I appreciate that. Tom?
We get to keep him for 6 more months.
Yeah, that's right. We'll work him hard.
Seems like
And underpay him.
He's leaving tomorrow.
It seems like a lot of people are ready to throw me out to pasture, and I'm just going to graze and fall over here pretty soon. Go ahead, Tom.
Anyway, I don't have anything to add to that, but I agree with it.
Okay. Melvin?
I'm good.
Ben?
I do want to echo what George said. Sometimes on council, we get dead set in some of our ways, and we butt heads sometimes and everything, but I do appreciate the direction that you have led the city in, and just the vision for growth. I think this building is a good example. George referenced it here.
Yes.
We're in a position to grow here. I understand, when this was built, the thought and many complaints were that, well, we don't need a building that size right now, and that was true at the moment, but as we've grown in the last 4 years since we moved in here, we've seen that, yeah, we do need a building this size because we're consistently growing and moving forward. So I do appreciate that, and I shot you that text. I really am sad to see you go as far as this term, but we'll look forward to working alongside you for the next few months here on council, but also in the future, because I know you have a heart for our city, so thank you. And I'm sure this will be reiterated in 6 months by several of us too.
Yeah, I do love the city. Enjoy being here. I've enjoyed the opportunity. It's been a huge learning experience. Sometimes you get chewed on one end by people that really don't know what goes on behind the scenes and what it takes to get things done and make deals happen, to get people to come to town. But the staff, it's phenomenal. I mean, I just think when George talks about equipment, and when we used to have park guys run around with Flintstone vehicles and they could stick their feet through the floorboard to stop them, and how I've always been an advocate for, trying to make sure that we get our employees some of the best tools and resources that they need to perform their jobs. And the council has also been elevated too. I mean, you guys have done a fantastic job sharing in some of the vision. One thing that I've always wanted to do is not forget what previous councils worked on. The city hall, I kept the maps in my office of their designs and kind of what they want to do, and I've always wanted to see this downtown district come to plan. And you guys, Sean, I told him about it, and next thing you know, we're buying property, and, we have a really good plan, and it may not look exactly like that in the end, but I just hope previous councils and however long it takes really focus on trying to make some of those things happen.
Well, Ray, there was one thing that I overlooked when I was giving my remarks, and that was one of your big accomplishments is when you came in there, we were just being drilled with specials. And the use of certain deals to put a stop to what was happening to us, because we were getting used big time. And we, we got that special deal solved, and that took some doing. And I know you had to sit through some auctions to have that happen, but you know what I'm talking about.
I will say it was pretty fun sitting in an auction, raise your hand, I'll buy them all. And they're all looking like, who's that guy?
Well,
So I can tell you, when I got to go to the tax auctions, it was a blast walking in there, purchasing everything.
What some of you guys who wasn't here got to understand it when those things they'd go up for public auction, these guys was buying them, then they wouldn't pay their specials for another 4 years, and we was just getting drilled, but that got to stop, and that was a real accomplishment. But anyway, I just want you to know that I for one really appreciate it.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Ben. George?
Yeah, kudos to you, Ray. I do have to say, we started out together 2013. You as the mayor, no one else would basically run for mayor, and you picked up the slack and you ran. I really appreciated that boldness that you had to do that. And in doing so, the trials and errors that we both faced in learning about the council, but I just appreciate the fact that you hung in there and you saw that vision, that progressiveness for the city, and I appreciate that about you and your determination, so I appreciate that. Also, I want to give kudos to Dee, our finance director, on an excellent audit report. Also, our Park City Fishing Derby, we're finalizing the plans for that. And that's coming up on June 19th from 9 to 11. So we're going to be a big city that weekend. We're going to have a lot of folks here. So want everybody to come out and enjoy that. Chisholm Point Pond on North Grove. And like I said, everything is free. It's supported by the city and a lot of sponsors that we use, a lot of donors that we use as well. So we want everybody to come out and join in the activities. Thank you.
John?
I'll second what George and the other guys said, so that's all I have. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And Ben?
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 8-0. Thank you and good evening.
Person.